We have roll call. Madam Clerk?
Dale Schlueter. Here. Kay Wilson. Here. Tweed Schuman is excused. Stacy Hessel. Here. Jason Weaver. Mark Helwig. Tom Duffy. Here. Marshall Savitsky. Here. Brian Bissonette. Michael Maestri.
Here.
Chris Rusk.
Here.
John Wigheimer.
Here.
Ron Kinsley. Ron Buckholz.
Here.
Ed Peters. Here. You have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. All right, number 3, Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, number 4, certification of compliance with open meeting law, Madam Clerk.
This meeting has been noticed to the public and news media as required by Section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes.
Okay. All right. Number 5, the meeting agenda has been presented. Everybody's okay with it? Any questions? Okay, number 6, public comment. Anybody out there? I don't have no appearance slip, so I take it nobody wants to talk tonight. Okay. Anybody got their hands up online or anything? Okay. All right. Number 7, approval of the minutes from the previous meeting, June meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay. We have a motion by Mr. Wigheimer, second by Mr. Duffy to approve the minutes as they're presented. All in favor say aye. 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 All opposed? Motion carries to approve. Number 8, zoning committee report. The zoning committee will hold its monthly public meeting tomorrow morning at 8:30. The zoning department continues to see above average permits and general inquiries. The Tourist Rooming House Ad Hoc Committee will hold its second meeting on Thursday, July 27th at 10 a.m. in the Sawyer County Boardroom. For June, the committee approved 1 conditional use permit and recommended approval of a 1 rezone case, which I will now read if there's no other questions. Okay, anybody got any questions on that? All right. And then, okay, number B, zone district map amendment rezone number 23-002. Purpose for the request is to rezone the entire 5.17 acres of residential recreational RR1 to agricultural 1A1. The previous owner had 2 horses that lived on that lived on it, 2 fenced acres area and the north side of the property. Is existing agricultural building also within this location. Fenced area does not slope down towards the river. Current owner would like to have cows, horses within the location again. Much of the surrounding area is zoned agriculture with only 2 of the residential properties within the immediate area. No additional comment letters or oppositions were received. The town of Winter approved this request on June 14th at 2023. The Sawyer County Committee, Zoning Committee public hearing on June 16th recommended for approval 5-0. Okay. Kinsley.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Kinsley and second by Mr. Wigheimer to approve rezone case number 23-002. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries to approve. Okay. Public Safety Committee. That's me again. I just got to dig in my pile. Bear with me, people. Okay, I wasn't at this meeting, but I do have the minutes. Mr. Schuman chaired it for me. Circuit Court, the judge was not there. Courthouse remodel updates. Andy, are you going to have them in your reports? Okay, I'll bypass them. Clerk of Court's office reports, a written report was provided. At this time, there was one jury trial scheduled for July. They continue with discussion on staffing with the new court facility beginning. And I'm sure you're going to do the court, consider the court staffing, okay? And the Sheriff's Department report, Communication Center, Chief Sedera indicated that dispatch has been inundated with 911 calls, many being accidental and hang-ups. He reviewed staffing indicating 3 vacancies to the dispatch center. 2 patrol deputies have been pulled into dispatch to cover the shift shortages. Patrol report, a written report was provided and reviewed by Sheriff Morotek. Reviewed the highlights. Total crashes to the date is 120. 28 personal injuries, 2 fatalities. There has been a dramatic increase in 911 calls, accounting for nearly 26% of the volume call. There was a motorcycle fatality over the July holiday weekend. 2 part-time staff are going through a recruitment at Academy that they're sponsoring. Jail report was written by Sergeant Waller, reviewed the highlights of the statistics. There are 2 Huber inmates, once has since been released. Okay. Communication system report. Sheriff Morotek provided verbal update for improvements made on communication systems. There are now better able to communicate with EMS. Emergency management was provided and reviewed. The extension for WDF winter ice storm was requested and has been approved. Work continues in Sawyer County emergency operation plans and requests for training. Child support, a written report was provided. There are 1,128 open cases. Total May current support due is $994,398.07 and $7,110, never mind, and 14 cents was collected. Ambulance report and billing. Written report was provided by Mr. Fremel, advised that there are now 2 paramedics that are near completion of the training, so they should fill their vacancies soon. The town ambulance contract draft, do you have that on yours, Andy, or no?
Not this one. No.
Okay. Mr. Alvarado presented a draft ambulance contract with the towns. He and Mr. Fremel will present to the towns. Mr. Alvarado reviewed that formulas for the charges and the historical per capita rates. A comparison cost and charges was also reviewed. Public comment provided by Linda Zilmer. A motion was made by Mr. Savitsky to present $80 per capita rate, our cost, in their upcoming discussions with the towns, and second by Mr. Peters. The motion carried without a negative vote. Criminal justice reporting update, I'll leave that to Mr. Alvarado. Okay, that ends my report. Okay.
Hey, Ron,
Yes.
you said 1 trial in July,
Yes.
but there's more scheduled in July?
I've got to go back here and look. I wasn't there, Andy, or Dale, so.
I was just wondering, only 1 trial in July so far?
I can clarify on that.
Go ahead, Marge, thank you.
It's a 5-day criminal trial.
Okay.
Our jury pool, we were only allowed to use them for 5 days, and so that's 1 trial is going to take up whole pool.
Okay, thank you, Marge, appreciate that, Dale. Okay, Dale?
Yeah, fine.
Okay, all right. Number Number B, second courtroom staffing and funding update. Discussion and possible action item.
In your packet, there's two items. One's a resolution pertaining to this, and then a summary of what's being proposed. I'll run through the summary. As most of you are aware who were here last month, you heard the request from the district court administrator and the court personnel of the desire to have a second judicial assistant position that would work with the second branch and our second judge. So we've took that back and worked with the staff as well as the district court to come up with a plan on how to accomplish that. And I guess my goal was to try to minimize the impact on our bottom line as much as possible, at least at the outset. So what's there is a summary of our current court staffing. We have a clerk of court, chief deputy, 4 deputy clerks, register and probate juvenile clerk, and 1 judicial assistant. That's what we're at as of today. The register and probate juvenile clerk position it's been vacated. That individual moved to a different position within the county in human services. So that we've been tiding things over with the judicial assistant and the clerk of court staff, as well as that person is still servicing their trials and court appearances for the work they already had lined up. So what we've proposed is to eliminate that position, though, and then attach the juvenile clerk duties that are part of that current position to the judicial assistants. So we propose to add the judicial assistant has been requested, but each of the JAs will take on the clerking duties for juvenile cases with their respective judges. The register and probate duties would be added to the clerk of court's office. Marge, our current clerk of court, would be the appointed register and probate, and all of the clerk of court staff would be named as deputies. We'd also add 1 half-time position into the clerk of court's office with that work moving there. So the net increase is going from 8 FTEs working within the court to 8.5 positions by adding that half-time and then switching the register and probate juvenile clerk to a judicial assistant. Financial impact on this move, and I should say this will all be projected to start August 1st when the second branch is up and running. We would, if approved tonight, we would move ahead on hiring the second judicial assistant and the half-time position in the clerk of court. The net impact in 2023 for the final 5 months is projected to be $22,108. If it was a full year, it would be $53,060. That accounts for the half-time position as well as some pay adjustments for people that are taking on additional duties. That would be offset by the additional court state aid we'll be getting. Currently, we get $52,275 annually from the state to run our court system. That goes into the clerk of court budget. It offsets personnel costs, attorney fees, witness fees, interpreter fees, things that it takes to operate the courtroom. We get that amount with 1 courtroom. When we have 2 courtrooms, it's a different formula when you have multiple courtrooms, but the court has said to project that we'll be doubling that amount. So we should be getting $104,544. There's no precise amount because what ends up happening is you get $42,275 for each of your courtrooms, and then the remaining money is divided amongst all the counties that have multiple courtrooms. But they said to project double the amount we're getting now. So the remainder of this year, for the rest of 2023, we should get $21,781 more, which nearly offsets the increase in expenses. Next year, we'll be getting $52,275 for the entire year, which with the halftime net position almost offsets the $53,060 in expenses. So that's, we're projecting a cost neutral impact by going this route. Now I'm going to attach a couple asterisks to that. The first one is, like I said, that the state aid offsets court expenses. We know we'll have more personnel costs. What we don't know is the other costs, like I mentioned, the witness fees, attorney fees, those types of things. In theory, we shouldn't have any more expenses because we shouldn't have any more court cases by having 2 courts. It's just that they're going to be spread out. But we don't know for sure until we're operating that second court, and there's not good data available from the state because the second branch approved in Sawyer County was approved with other court branches that are just getting up and running as well. So we don't know if they're experiencing any increase in costs. And then the other asterisk is that the clerk of court has requested a full-time position as part of the 2024 budget and staffing plan. So, but we're not going to take that up until we get into the 2024 budget outcome. We're finalizing that. That's come in, we know that. But right now, we're just trying to address the immediate need for the second branch getting up and running in August. I'll pause for questions now.
Okay, any questions for Andy on any of this? Mr. Slater?
Thank you for going through that, and if I missed something, forgive me. But the additional things that we're funding will be probably covered, mostly covered by the additional amount. But if we didn't have to provide these additional things, we would have that second amount to spend on other duties, such as another person in the clerk of court's office. So it's not really budget neutral, it's still costing us money.
I think the first part of what you asked is true. I mean, we get the state aid regardless if we add the judicial assistant position or not. So yeah, I mean, if we didn't add another position, we would potentially have less levy money to put in there.
Yeah,
But I should say, we are adding a position in the clerk of court's office, a half-time position, as part of this.
no, I understand that, and that's kind of separate from what I'm talking about. It's costing us additional funds.
It's not going to cost, at least right now, it shouldn't cost us any more levy. What we're projecting is no more levy money than we're putting in now. County money.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any more questions for Mr. Alvarado?
There will be. Like has been requested, we're going to be tracking the expenses of the second court, and we'll see what the impact is. I've mentioned at other meetings, we don't know, some of the conversations are, could there be more cases? There might be, because cases that were getting settled pre-trial might go to trial now because they'll be going quicker. When there's a long waiting period, I think some cases might get settled, or things they were willing to plead out before, they won't be willing to plead, so we might have more actual trials going to the court. So that's one of the things we just don't know how this is going to affect that activity.
So as we track these things and the expenses potentially build up, can we bill the state for this?
We can bill them. I don't think they're going to pay us, though.
Yeah.
Ms. Hassel?
I was just going to make a motion to increase the court staffing resolution of 2023.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Hassel and a second by Mr. Savitsky to approve increasing the court staffing resolution. Any more discussion? Okay, Lynn, electronic vote.
Okay, voting should be open. Mr. Maestri, could you cast your vote?
Yes.
Mr. Rusk?
Mr. Rusk, cast your vote.
I approve. Vote to approve.
Okay. We have a vote of 11 yes, 1 nay vote.
Okay. Motion carries. All right, number 10.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maintenance has got the building pretty much set up, I guess, as far as they can go. And they're working on jail, getting ready for the annual inspection. And now we started mowing the grass at the senior center. The grounds is scheduled to get done. And the airport, they held a pancake breakfast. They fed close to 400 people. It's kind of a record for them, feeding so many. They are now done with the terminal building, a remodel, and they're putting together their 5-year plan. And they have a committee put together for that. And it's going to take
Extremely
over
a
the
bunch
course
of
of
shit.
approximately a year to come up with a 5-year plan, which will come back in front of the county board. We also have a resolution for the airport. Andy, you want to touch on that a little bit, please?
Sure. The resolution is a petition for airport aid through the State Bureau of Aeronautics. Kind of the summary version is that we operate a GA airport, General Aviation Airport, that's part of the FAA system. So we get an annual allotment of funds called entitlement dollars that are used for improvements at the airport. As part of that, we need to maintain a list of projects with the state to show them that we have needs here so that the money is allocated. Once we petition for items, then the entitlement dollars can be used for them. So this came up because the list of projects that is in the petition were petitioned for 5 years ago, and after 5 years, that petition expires and you need to re-up. We are currently in the process, in the pipeline of getting another piece of snow removal equipment. And so we need to re-up that, so we went ahead and just decided to re-up the entire list. We had to have a public hearing, and there was some interest from the public in this. There is no project current to acquire more land or grow the airport, but we leave as an example, we leave land acquisition in the list of projects that should a piece of property come up adjacent to the airport that would be advantageous for us to pursue. We already have that approval to use funds to go in that direction. I think that's kind of the summary.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes,
If the courthouse update, are we waiting on that?
we'll get that with Mr. Alvarado, please. Thank you. Yep, thank you. So we need a motion to approve the resolution.
Okay, need a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, we have motion by Mr. Kinsley, second by Mr. Savitsky to approve the petitioning airport aid. Okay, any more discussion? Voice vote? Lynn?
That's fine. Oh, do you want a voice vote or electronic?
Oh, an electronic vote, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay, let me open that back up.
Sorry.
1 second, that's okay, that's okay. Okay, it should be open for voting. Mr. Maestri, would you cast your vote?
Yes.
Mr. Rusk?
Yes.
Eleven to 0, it passes.
Okay, all right.
Move my report, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kinsley. All right, number 11, Land, Water, and Forest Committee.
Yes, Land, Water, and Forest Resources Committee met on 12th July of 2023. We had reports from Register of Deeds and also from Land Records and County Surveyor Department. The Real Property Lister report totaled 207 property transfers and 5 certified survey maps processed in June. There are 2 boards of a review scheduled for July in various, in 2 separate towns. The county surveyor's report said that
Yes.
the survey crew is working on corners in Winter, Meteor, Radisson, and Spider Lake and Hayward Town. And there was a contracted remonumentation project near Deer Lake in the town of Meteor that was completed in June, and that restored 7 previously lost corners and maintenance on 12 other corners. The Sawyer County Forestry Department report included recreational trails, and one overlying comment from a number of other reports is that it's dry and dusty in comparison to all of the bugs that were around in the month of May. Trail maintenance is ongoing, and the LCO Trail 30 has been temporarily rerouted due to construction. County Forestry written report was provided. They have surpassed their time standards, working with the Wisconsin DNR, and DNR and Wisconsin DNR and Sawyer County been working together to improve access for wildlife projects, timber harvesting, and general public access. Timber sales are on target. Oak wilt restrictions ended on July 15th, and so harvest may be picking up. Sawyer County is on target for the county forest certification audit. Trail rehabs, bids came in, and those, a list was provided for the information of the committee. The Chequamegon Area Mountain Bike Association MOU, a draft, 2023 draft was presented and reviewed. This document has been reviewed by our legal counsel, and we voted to accept with editorial changes that we found as we were going through the report, or through that MOU, and it was approved, and it's on the agenda for tonight's meeting for the county board. DNR Forestry, a written report was provided. Timber marking and sale boundary work has been the focus of the work during the month. Zoning and Conservation Department remains busy with projects and permits, and the Billy Boy Dam project is being reviewed with corporate counsel. USDA report, lack of rain is hampering farm crop growth, affecting prices on product, and there were dates provided by Mr. Sheptick for USDA processing. The LCO report, it's the new health center building that is requiring the reroute of Trail 30, and that completes my report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Peters. Are there any questions for Mr. Peters? Ms. Hessel?
Is there a reason for the 25-year term on the MOU for the CAMBA?
That was just that was the way it was presented. We didn't have a...
Is the reason that they approached us to put an agreement in place is they're pursuing grant funding, and that's a contingency of the grant funding.
Is the 25 years?
Yes, 25
Okay.
years in the agreement. I would point out, though, that the agreement can be ended at any time by the county.
I did see that. I was just
Okay.
wondering why the initial time
Yeah,
was 25.
That's the reason.
Okay, thank you.
Lynn, you want to comment on something? The light's on there. All right. Any more questions for Mr. Peters?
Ed, have those edits been corrected on this presentation?
What was in the packet, I noticed was not corrected, but
Me
what
too.
it has been corrected for operations tonight. So.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Number B, Gambia MOU draft agreement.
I make a motion to approve the CAMBA agreement for
Oh.
2023.
Second
second.
that.
It's okay.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Wilson, a second by Ms. Hessel to approve the agreement. Any more discussion? Okay. No more discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, number 12, City of Hayward annexation request. Go ahead, Mr. Alvarado.
I'll start, and the clerk can jump in if she would like. She received this request from the City of Hayward. Similar to, we did one almost identical to this last year. where the city has annexed a piece of property from the town into the city. And when they do that, they need to attach it to a a ward within the city. And they've asked us, the county, and the county controls the 10-year, or the maps that are redone every 10 years. They've asked for this to be added to Supervisory District 7. It's currently in Supervisory District 4, which is outside of the city. So by bringing it in, they want it attached to District 7, which would be their Ward 4. If it was not attached, they'd have to create a separate ward, which doesn't have a ton of impact because there's nobody living there. But it does have an impact because it creates another layer, another...
It would require another ballot to be created for a zero population, which is a very expensive process.
Right.
So you're saying it would cost the county money,
It would.
I guess. Okay.
So I would want to point out at the admin committee, when this was reviewed, the committee made a motion to approve. We didn't have the resolution at that time, but the resolution summarizes the motion approving adding it to Supervisory District 7 of the county, which would be Ward 4 of the city. Pardon?
It was currently Ward 4, it changed to 7.
Yes, it'll go to 7, yep.
They took it from mine,
Okay.
so I think they didn't like the supervisor.
I asked the city why it was requested as for a business to get on city water and utilities.
No, I understand, I just was trying to make light of them leaving my district.
Okay, any more questions? Now we need a motion to approve the resolution. Who made the motion? Mr. Schleter? Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Schleter and a second by Mr. Peters to approve the annexation request. Any more discussion? Okay, electronic vote.
Mr. Rusk, please cast your vote.
I approve.
Mr. Maestri?
Yes.
And it passes 12-0.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. Number 13, Health and Human Services Board Report. Mr. Schleter?
Thank you. Health and Human Services, the ADRC has seen an increase in walk-in clients. Part of that is contributed to ticks and other critters. The long-term, Carol Martin has been hired as an adult long-term care supervisor for that unit. CIPS position, Child Protective Services is all full. They have a full roster, except for the supervisor position. They're working on that. July 10th through the 4th was proclaimed Economic Support and Case Management Week. Proclamation by the governor for all the hard work and support that our economic support teams and management people provide and offer to our residents. Here it is again. As expected this time of year, ticks and other airborne things are going on. Let's see. Oh, in June, the health department water treatment part was recertified for testing drinking water. That's quite an accomplishment. The DNR doesn't give those, or the state doesn't give those certifications out very easily, and it's for microscopic analysis of wee little things that you don't want to have in your drinking water. So it's kudos to them Let's see. The human health hazard policy has been recently reviewed and updated. The Health and Human Services budget was reviewed and approved by the Health and Human Services Board. Sent that on to Finance. The last part here is Ms. Lyons has requested to have 3 all-staff meeting days set aside, 1 in September, 1 in January, and 1 in May for 1 half-day meetings of all of the staff together from Health and Human Services. Because they have gone through quite a few vacancies that are now filled, she feels it in the best interest to do some team building, some ideas. But I believe we need a vote by the county board, Andy, to close for those half days.
Yes, we'll be closing the department. It would be good for the county board to approve that, but we'll bring that back
Later.
later, yep.
Okay, thank you. And the request from Ms. Lyons was approved by the Health and Human Services Board. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Schleter? Mr. Kinsley?
Wait for the next one.
Oh. Okay, if there's no more questions, thank you, Dale.
Yep.
Number 14, Finance Committee Chair, Mr. Kinsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I feel like in finance, we are covering a lot of ground, and I'll share some of the things we've went over. One was the supervisor per diem that we received because there'll be an election next April, and the per diem has to be set prior to that, and it was decided to leave the per diem as it is presently. The Treasurer's Department, there's property out there that normally would get sold, but it's been asked to be reviewed by LCO before we put it out there on sale. So that's in the process, waiting for LCO to get back to us regarding that. Sales tax by Mr. Mark is running ahead of last year, and it continues to be strong. He always anticipates it's going to drop sometime, but sales tax is doing well. The overall budget is going to start to put together. The departments will have their stuff in by the end of July, and we'll be looking at in the month of August. Capital improvement plans look good, and we have a resolution awarding the sales, and we have a gentleman here for that tonight. Also, we talked about the ambulance billing. The ambulance billing is probably about the highest it's been ever. The money we're receiving back in is the highest it's been in a long time, so that's a positive. That's all I have. Unless someone has some questions, I'll turn it over to Andy for letter B, please.
Thank you. So last month you approved the initial resolution for the sale of $4 million in general obligation promissory notes. What we have tonight is the resolution to approve the sale. Before I turn over to Brian from PMA, I just want to point out that in your packet there was a draft resolution, so you could see what the resolution was going to look like. And then today we added the final version once the sale has been completed with all that data. So when you go to approve it, you're going to want to approve the final version, item B2. But with that, I'll turn it over to Brian Della from PMA, who will update you or give you the presentation on the sale of the notes today.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Everyone should have one of these, and we'll just walk through it. You know, as Andy mentioned, last month was where you authorized the sale. And the purpose of the sale, you know, had 3 components. It was courthouse facilities. You don't finish that financing up. There's the 2023 capital improvement plan projects, the 2024 CIP projects. And the county had an outstanding $320,000 state trust fund loan that was at 5.5% that was used to finance some forest land. So we refinanced that at a lower rate to save the county, you know, a little bit of interest expense. So all that together rounds up to $4 million. So, good news, and as expected, Moody's has affirmed the county's AA3 rating. And, not a lot has changed in their analysis since last year. The only, essentially what they always say as well is, as long as you don't issue a ton more debt or spend down your fund balance too much, you should be expect to keep this rating in its current place. And it's really, and AA3 is a really good rating. It's in the AA category, which, as you'll see, really helps to drive interest rates lower when you go out to bond. The following page has the bidding results, and pleasantly surprised that the county got 7 bids today. That's as many as the county got last year on its $8 million courthouse borrowing. So this being a little smaller and a little shorter, I thought it might be kind of 5 or 6 bids, but 7 came in, so that's really, really good. The winning bid had an average rate of 3.26%. So that's the rate that essentially investor, that the underwriter purchased the debt from. And then your total cost of borrowing would be just a little bit higher because you've got some expenses that would bake in there. But the winning bid came in at 3.26%. And that was from a bank called BOK Financial Securities. And these happen to have an office in Milwaukee. So just down the road, really. Or from me, I guess. So the following page is a maturity by maturity pricing. So remember, we're issuing 10-year notes. So that's actually, it's not one loan, it's really 10 separate borrowings. Each one's a separate note. And they can, these are securities, so they can be chopped up and sliced up, and different investors can own different pieces of them. That's what helps drive the rates so low. As you might be able to just sort of see on this, the rates are a little higher than the yield. So in other words, we give the potential purchasers a little bit of latitude how they want to structure their bid, and it's based on investor preference. And so essentially, what's going to happen here is that they're going to pay you a little extra money up front to the tune of $114,000. And the reason they're going to do that is you're going to pay them a little extra interest in the future down the road. And it's just it's an even Steven swap at 3.26%. So it's a kind of an indifferent, but it helps by giving this latitude. It brings in different investors that have different preferences, because some investors really want a 4% coupon even though their yield's only 3%, and they'll pay up for it. They'll give you the cash up front, that little bit of difference. So so that's how for a $4 million debt issue, the gross proceeds are $4,114,000. The underwriter takes their fee, and any dollars above that need to be segregated towards the capitalized interest fund, so the debt service fund. So in this case, I provide this math in here. You guys don't need to understand it, but sometimes you get a question, and well, here's the answer. We can dig right into it if you're interested. So because this is essentially, these are the majority of this is for new money projects. That $77,000, because the purchase price is $77,000 over the par, that money needs to go into the debt service fund. So that's like capitalized interest. So there's essentially $77,000 off this issue that'll be just applied towards your first interest payment. So that's the math there at the bottom of the maturity by maturity pricing. And if you just flip the page over, you can see the debt service. So this is the debt service. The $4 million, the interest, $698. But like I said, there's $77,000 of that'll be applied to your first interest payment. So we've provided the gross and the net debt service. The next 3 pages are just some snapshots from the county's levy model that we help you guys maintain. You know, the levy model is split up in two pieces, debt service levy. Everything else is what we call operating levy. So this debt service levy actual and projection, so we go back to 2018 through 2023, is actual. And it's a little chopped off on the right-hand side, but you can see how the county's debt service levy has, borrowing is, you guys kind of engaged in a ramp up in your borrowing. We're looking here to level off. But so this year, it looks like, or next year, I'm sorry, that the county's debt service levy would be $1,931,000, including the application of the $77,000. So it was $1,724,000 last year. This year was $1,931,000. We were targeting about $2 million, which we were right on actually, except you take the $77,000 off, and you're just at $1,900,000. And so, we were working on this actually for quite a number of years to try to tweak it just right. So the idea is that the county would have one more increase in its debt service levy, okay? And that amount it can be anything you want it to be, but what we've modeled is $2,325,000. And why did we pick that number, or why did I work with staff on that number? Because the idea is if you look in these boxes in the yellow, the idea is that every fall you could go out and borrow a certain amount on like a 6-month note, right? Like you're doing let's say every November 1st you want to borrow a 6-month note. And the amount you could borrow here every year, almost to the dollar, is in this yellow column. And those amounts are about $1,350,000. So over the last several years, the county's annual CIP has been about $1,300,000, $1,400,000, right? So you guys can maintain borrowing $1,350,000 every year for 6 months, so you hardly pay any interest on it. You can go through a local bank if you want, or a state trust fund loan program if you want. As an aside, you might, through some unique interpretations up at the Department of Revenue, you might want to consider perhaps doing more local banks in the future, but we'll just talk about that. So you can borrow this $1,350,000 to do your capital projects. I've just estimated $25,000 in interest in there, and every year your debt service levy would be $2,325,000. So you've got it really all like projected right here. I mean, all this stuff's known. So, I guess I worked myself out of a job since you guys generally don't need me for that stuff. So it is that simple. Every fall you borrow $1,350,000, and your debt service levy is not going to change. Good work. The next page is just the green page is your operational levy. So this is just to help you understand, how the operation is a lot bigger than your debt service, right? And this just breaks it down and the different components or the different departments. The items on the left are subject to levy limits. So that's net new construction. So, we look at general fund, no library, human services, highway, no bridge aid, capital projects, no EMS, and special revenue. So 2018 through 2023 are all actuals. And then for the projection, we just assumed it was growing at 0.8%, because 0.8% is a pretty reasonable estimate for net new construction. And then, because that's levy limits, limit your operations to net new construction. So we just grew those numbers at 0.8%. Pretty modest. And then on the right, those other 4 categories, they're not subject to levy limits, but we just kind of put some numbers that we thought were reasonable. With EMS, you ramped it up, but now that it's up to this, $1,500,000, we're thinking, it's my understanding it's probably where it's going to stay. You know, it's going to be, it's not going to, there's no big increases, it's just small increases. And then you've got capital for EMS, and kind of assuming that's pretty flat. Then there's library, you know, and that's not a huge ticket item. And bridge aid, you know, you can't really estimate that as far as I know. It just depends what the towns are doing. So we just put a 0 on that. But it kind of shows, so what your total operating levy looks like, the portion that's subject to levy limits, the portion that's not subject to levy limits. So you can see your total operating levy. The previous slide has your total debt service levy. This slide has your total operating levy, and that's all there is. So we can flip the page, and it's just a little bar chart showing your percent change, and I guess they're all increases, but so the percent increase since 2018 in your overall levy. So you've had some, you can see you've had a series of the last few years, kind of that 5 and even 7%, but you've absorbed essentially most of the increase from the, you know, the new courthouse. So we don't, you know, based on the data numbers in this model, we're only growing here at modest amounts going forward. If you just take 2 more steps, it's really 1 more step up. You got to go. You take your debt from $2 million to $2,325,000. Just take that 1 step. You'll see another increase, but then you never really have to increase it again as long as you're only borrowing $1,350,000 for your capital, your annual capital. You got a big building, sure, that's going to cost you something extra, but like a highway shop or something. But you know, it looks like smooth sailing. You just got to balance the budget and live within levy limits. But you know, it's no easy task. But that's what you get. That's what's presumably going to happen unless they change the legislation. So. With that, there's a resolution before you. As Andy mentioned, a draft was in your packet. A final came this afternoon because we took bids at 10 a.m., so we didn't know who was going to win and what the rates were going to be and the price they were going to pay. So that came emailed over this afternoon. And then there would be like your typical roll call vote, you know, through the electronic system you got.
Cecil?
Are most counties at that Moody rating, or are we unique?
That's a good question. I would say that most counties that are rated by Moody's are in the AA category. There are some in the single A category, and there are some in the AAA category. I'd almost say that AAA and single A almost balance out, and then the majority are in the AA category. You know, I mean, there's just some wealthier counties that just don't have a lot of debt. You know, like Waukesha or something, Washington. If you're fairly wealthy, you don't have a lot of debt. That's how you get AAA. I mean, if you're rural up north, you know, some places just struggle. You know what I mean? They balance their budgets and everything, but that's just because they're just not quite as wealthy. Maybe they don't have the really great recreational lakes and those expensive homes. They just, you know, they kind of fall into the single A category. But you guys are right in the old sweet spot.
And then second question, do we get penalized for paying off our debt early? Is there any penalty for paying off the debt early?
By Moody's or?
By when we have such debt, as you're discussing in here, the $4 million, if you paid it off early, is there a penalty?
Oh, is there a call provision?
Yeah.
Okay, I think
That's okay.
Yes, I think I understand your question. So yes, I'm glad you asked. This debt has 10 maturities, and the first 8 maturities you cannot prepay. The final 2 maturities you can prepay, okay, at year 8. I would say this is the industry standard, the old-fashioned industry standard. Some people have tried to move this forward, but it comes at a cost. If you want the right to prepay early, it's going to cost you something, right? So the reason we made the last 2 maturities is we matched the call date on your courthouse bonds. So if for some reason rates are lower in the year 2031, April 31, you would have 2 debt issues. This just has 2 maturities, so there's not a lot to be saved. But if there's anything to be saved, this issue and your courthouse issue will have the exact same call date, so you could refinance and get enough bonds essentially to probably make it worth it. So yeah.
Okay, any more questions for Brian? Huh? Okay. Yeah, motion, vote?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Righeimer
I'll second that.
and a second by Ms. Hessel to approve. Any more discussion? Okay, we're gonna do remote. Lynn?
Yes.
Okay.
The voting should be open. Mr. Rusk, please cast your vote.
Approve.
Mr. Maestri?
Yes.
Okay, closing the vote. And it passes 12-0.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Is that where they are? You up there too?
All right, number 15, Economic Development and Extension Committee. Mr. Duffy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our Economic Development Committee met on July 10th. We had a short report from the Fair Association. They're working hard on the upcoming fair, and a short report from the Wisconsin Extension as to their summer activities. The Hayward Lakes Visitor and Convention Bureau reported that the total business sales in Sawyer County were up 7.6% from last year. Visitors in Sawyer County spent $103.3 million in 2022, that's last year, and they spent $95.9 million in 2021. So the difference is $7.5 million more spent in 22 than in 21. The visitor spending also generated $9.8 million in state and local taxes. And we also had a report on room taxes collected so far in Sawyer County. And we were told that Discover Wisconsin is in town now filming for a program to be aired on October 21st. The Economic Development Corporation is still looking for a director. The Hayward Library has been awarded a PBS grant, and they also shared with us their photo contest running from June 5th to August 31st. We had a broadband report from Andy, and he'll cover that in his report. The Berkey registration for the 50th is now over 9,000 racers. This is the week for the Lumberjacks, and there's over 100 competitors, really a strong field. And the Lumberjack Run is on Saturday at 8 o'clock in case any of you want to join. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Duffy. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Duffy? Mr. Slater?
How much was collected in room taxes?
Well, they broke it down, and I don't have it right in front of me, but I can get it quickly. The town of Hayward collected $107,893, an increase of over 13,000 from 21. The town of Hunter, $84,286, a decrease of 600 from 2021. The town of Bass Lake, $49,371, an increase of 22,000. And the town of Round Lake, $33,369. That's the first year of collecting.
That money goes to the towns and
Yeah, I don't know how that's divided. You know that?
There's a breakdown between the townships and then the Hayward Lakes Visitors Bureau to promote people coming here. But then, do you know what the percentage is, Marshall, for the townships?
I don't know the percentage. I think they might even be different based on each township. Townships
they
have a
approved.
contract with the Hayward, the Hayward Lakes, and I think within some townships, there's their own resort associations that they allocate some of the money to, and then they retain some at the township level.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Duffy.
You're welcome, Mr. Chairman.
All right, number 16, County Administrator's Report. Andy?
So update on courthouse renovation. Quickly wrapping up the renovation work. Some of the millwork is in place in the remodeled courtroom, as well as painting is all completed. So the timeline is still holding that they'll be done with the construction by August 1st. And then we have 2 weeks to finish out the AV and CCAP from the state come in and get their AV or IT work completed. So it is to be in operation on Monday, August 14th, and available for use by the new judge. No major surprises as of right now with the renovation work. On the exterior, you've probably seen like the east side of the building is pretty well completed. Parking lots in use, hydro seating is completed, and I think we're already mowing some grass in those areas. And the pavement's completed out here. Curb and gutter is done on the west side, and I think blacktop might be done tomorrow even. But they hydro seeded that today, so it's starting to look better outside. As far as, just make sure everybody's aware, you should have received an invite for Judge-elect Isham's investiture or swearing-in ceremony. That's Friday, August 11th at 3:30. Everybody's invited. That'll be held in the new courtroom, the Baker courtroom. We expect to have judges from around the region and the appellate court, so it's supposed to be a good turnout for that. Personnel, we have another union negotiation session next week, or at least a meeting. We're hoping to get that wrapped up because we are in July already. We're 7 months into the contract period. So it's been pretty slow going, but I think we've made some headway just with some offline discussions. Recruitments are improving. We still have a few positions open, but we've filled in some highway positions in Radisson. You heard about the paramedics filling in positions we had available in the ambulance, and we've cut the number of positions open in HHS as well. The Sheriff's Department, we're full on deputies now, still open on dispatchers and jailers, but I see the sheriffs here. We have enough female jailers. We're still
23rd is targeted.
Yep. So we're making good progress there and getting everybody trained. We went through the new position request. I think it's been mentioned by a couple of the committee reports. We've gone through a period here the last 6 months of moving people into positions, new leadership in HHS and at Highway, and some division heads, new division heads within the Sheriff's Department. So a lot of those positions we've been moving people from within as best we can, and those that are qualified and capable. But we also recognize that a lot of times we put people into those positions who know the job, they know their field of expertise, but really have never had any management training or experience. So we've contracted with Northwood Technical College, and we've got 19 employees in a leadership and training program. They're in the second Wednesday. This was the second week, so we're getting some good feedback on that, just making sure we give our employees a good opportunity to succeed. You know, a lot of times it's, you say you go from being one of the guys to having to lead the guys, so to speak. So that's not always the easiest transition. So we're trying to help them out. Also on the recruitment side, you heard in the public safety report that we are sponsoring a couple current employees to the Law Enforcement Academy. We're also going to be doing that with a couple EMTs, sponsoring them in the paramedic program to try to build their own pipeline for some of those advanced positions. 24 budget process is underway. Departments are to have their budgets in by the end of the month. We've communicated with the outside entities. A lot of those requests have been made. We have received a couple new requests from groups we have not provided funding to in the past. We have not reached out to any of those groups, but we'll put those into the pool, and when we put the administration budget together, we'll consider those, but otherwise we'll make sure you're aware of those when the board gets the budget. With PMA's assistance now with the borrowing we're doing, or kind of the plan we're on, I would just point out too, this is a good document to keep handy. I know sometimes you ask questions on our levies for departments, and this is the framework we're working within. So we're borrowing already for we have borrowed now for the 24 capital improvement plan. So we build backwards. We know how much money we have to work with, and we're whittling out the request to fit within that framework. So that a lot of that work's already been done for next year. We have had some requests for new positions or position increases from a couple departments, so we'll be reviewing those. Corporation council work, I think was mentioned on the land water. A lot of big issue probably right now is the Billy Boy Dam and the water levels there that affect a number of lakes, and we're kind of working back and forth with the DNR on that. That's a fairly complicated issue. And then otherwise, some land use issues and open records requests that we consult with Corp Council on. And then you also heard about the human health hazard ordinance or human health hazard process, and we're seeing some gaps potentially in that we're talking to the committees about, where things maybe aren't a human health hazard that's just governed by state statute as well as our county ordinance, but we really don't have anything on the books as far as nuisances or other ways to approach those. That would be a consideration. We're also upgrading the animal control ordinance, so we're finding more gaps that will take a little time. Working with ordinances is just kind of a time-consuming process. It's not real quick. Criminal Justice Collaborating Council, I think one thing to point out, the jail population is down. It's been consistently down for 10, 11 months now. We're down, I know when I started we were over 100 inmates, and we're consistently now at 75. And that includes the females we've been housing out of county. I think there's a few reasons for that, but that's a positive. But there we are seeing more opioid, fentanyl issues. You know, the sheriff conveyed in some committees just the severity of that issue, and it's to the point now where it's putting potentially a strain on our EMS services, that they're tied up on those calls and not available for other calls, which is troublesome. We did receive word today that we did get through Justice Point's assistance working with public health and the jail, or I guess the Sheriff's Department, a law enforcement diversion grant. So we're already doing diversion with people already in the jail. Now there'll be some assistance provided to law enforcement to be able to do diversion work in the field, which will help as well. No update on the opioid settlement. There is a working opioid budget right now that has outlined quite a bit of public awareness and kind of more marketing or dealing with the fentanyl issue, and we're adding in one more piece as far as assistance to the jail and law enforcement, so that should be done and ready for consideration in the next month. We did meet, the ambulance director and I, Mr. Fremmel, met with 2 of the Washburn County towns regarding their ambulance contracts. We meet with the 3rd in August, so we're working on that. We also have some other ambulance issues that have cropped up within the county that we're working on as well, just making sure that calls are being handled the correct way and routing the dispatch traffic where it needs to go. Airport, the runway rehabilitation project that was scheduled for next year was pushed off to 25 because of funding available at the state. We had applied for federal funding just to try to get moved back up to next year. That application was turned down. We received notice of that last week. And then we approved the petition tonight for airport funding, and hopefully we're in line to get another piece of snow removal equipment. We're hoping for this winter, but it's looking like it might arrive in the middle of the winter or after. Broadband, Norvado and BevCom received broadband grants in the last round, and then other than that, I emailed out that you should all received the link to do the WISER survey. The PSC is doing another round of surveys with a consultant in preparation for the funding that's going to be available at the end of this year. That's the BEAD funding, BEAD, that's been allocated to each state. Mr. Peters is on the regional BEAD group that's doing their work, and all this work that's being done is to hopefully target those funds to where they need to go to have the best impact throughout the state and fill in some of the gaps. Tribal land taxation changes. So there were funds appropriated in the state budget for local governments impacted by lost revenue of tribal land that is no longer taxable to make us whole. So we'll be getting more. Don't have a lot of details on that other than that there's money there. And like was mentioned in one of the committee reports, we do have a list of properties that were taken on back taxes just recently that we were preparing to put up for sale through the tax deed process. We've pulled back on that because we did get contacted by one former property owner of that list that is a tribal member that wants their property back. So we don't want to go ahead and complicate things more by proceeding with the sale. So we've turned that list over of all properties within the reservation boundaries to the tribal governing board to ask them to review it. to determine who might be a tribal member on that list, and then we'll address that issue. State budget summary. I think everybody heard that the state budget was signed and all the fun stuff that goes along with that. Now we get into digging into it and learning about how these things will work. So there was additional shared revenue approved for the local governments. So now effectively we'll be sharing in the sales tax at the state level, where the state's going to allocate 1 penny of the 1 penny of the 5 pennies on every dollar back to local governments. So we should see an increase every year because of that. I think in the last 20 years, the sales tax collection has gone down twice, so it should be a fairly consistent increase, one hopes. I mentioned this before, and I don't want to pour cold water on it. It's always nice to get additional revenue, and that we'll have plenty of uses for. For Sawyer County, we were getting $25,376 of shared revenue. The new allocation is what they're calling supplemental funds of $289,376. So it is an increase of $1,140, but we're still one of the bottom 4 counties in the state in terms of the amount of shared revenue we get. I think the formula was broken years ago when they set that, and they essentially froze it, how much we were getting based on valuation. But it just doesn't seem right that with the amount of increase we are having an increase in population and increase in services, we can't take advantage of the increase in property values in the county to share that burden. But it is what it is. The additional supplemental aid does come with restrictions. Eligible areas are law enforcement, fire protection, EMS, emergency response, communications, public works, courts, and transportation. So I guess to Mr. Kinsley's question, there's additional money for the courts through shared revenue, but obviously through all those services, there's demands. There is restrictions on these areas, but there's also ability for us to move money around, so we can replace money, in short. But we are looking at how that will impact the budget and any other. We're learning about kind of the rules that come within the budget and how this will all work. There's other things that are noteworthy. There are going to be innovation grants for transferring or consolidating services with other local governments. We could get together with the city of Hayward or another county on a service. There's a bunch of criteria with that as to what will qualify and how much of a savings it needs to be. But there are avenues for additional revenues in that area. Maybe one thing we'll have to pay attention to, there is a new requirement for maintenance of effort certifications for law enforcement, emergency services, and if we don't certify, there's a potential for a reduction in shared revenue penalties. So there's different measuring criterias. Off the top of my head, it's the number of personnel you have working in that area. It's reduction in maintaining your response times, maintaining the number of people you serve. So I don't know. I'm really concerned about law enforcement, but potentially, if we were to change anything with the emergency services, like the ambulance service, we'd have to really be cognizant of of maintaining the amount of service that's been provided, whether it's somebody else or somebody else. There's also, I just learned about this yesterday, there's changes in the regulation of non-metallic mining quarries within Act 12. My first read, it doesn't impact our conditional use process that much, but it might impact more at the municipality level. But there's a bunch of reading to be done there. There is a ban on preferences in hiring and contracting that you probably have heard about in the news. It's in there, not a real impact for how we hire and contract currently. There is a ban on advisory referendums as well. I know we've seen some of those come through with varying opinions, but there's some outline of language with that. Changes to the stewardship program. So this would affect us because we're north of Highway 8. The new rules say that any acquisition projects that are requesting stewardship funds require all local governments in that area to adopt a resolution approving the acquisition. I don't think that's been an issue in this area, but I think on the east side of northern Wisconsin, they've had some problems with that. There's restrictions on the power of local health officers. It limits the mandates on closure of a business to control an outbreak or epidemic to 30 days, unless the governing body, the county board, would approve a 30-day extension. And there's no ability to distinguish between an essential or non-essential business. The personal property tax was repealed. There is one impact on managed forest land, which we have in this area, that any improvements or fixtures on MFL will now be subject to the taxation as real property. There's also ambulance and staffing and licensing changes, which were too long for me to want to explain tonight. But basically, like all areas of Wisconsin and probably rural America, are struggling with staffing ambulances. So all of these staffing and licensing changes would be to the advantage of providers trying to find staff and keep staff. One of the basic things is you can't prohibit your ambulance staff from working for another ambulance service. I mean, they might have to have a primary employer, but we can't stop them from doing that. There is also some discretion on determining who is qualified to be an emergency responder. If they have military experience but not a state license, you can make a judgment call as to whether or not they're capable of running with your service. So there's more to be had. You hear about the big stuff in the news. Now we start to learn about all the details and any administrative rules they'll adopt and just how this will work. That's
it?
That's it.
Okay, any questions for Andy? Okay, thank you, Andy. Number 17, correspondence, reports from conferences and meetings. Alex, can you give the board an update and tell them what's going on, going to happen with these emails, just so everybody's on the same page?
Yeah. So some of you noticed tonight that we passed around that little paper asking for phone numbers and if you can get a text message or a voice call. So here in about a week, Microsoft is requiring that we have two-factor authentication on your emails. That's where you have a password and then you have a second factor, which is that code that will get texted to you or called to you. This is not something that we turned on. It's being pushed down from Microsoft, and there's no, I don't really want to do this button. It's getting turned on. Basically, when it gets turned on, you're going to log into your email, and then after you type your password in, it's going to present you with another box looking for this code that either gets texted to you, or you're going to get a phone call, and an automated robot's going to tell you what the code is. You plug that code in, and then you sign into your email just like you currently do. That's really about the only change to it. It's just another step to do in that process. It's a one-time thing if you use like the Outlook app on like a mobile device like your tablets, or if you use Outlook on a computer. If you sign into the web portal, so if you open a web browser and go log in that way, it will prompt you every single time. But if you use like the Outlook app, it'll prompt you one time and then it typically leaves you alone for a few months anyway. At least that's Mike and I's experience with it, because we've had it on for the last 6 months or so.
Cecil?
Will it help with security efforts, or are they just doing it to just add a layer?
It helps with security, because if someone does get your password, they still need that code, and they can't really get the code unless they stole your phone. So.
Okay.
Oh, Mark?
Mark?
Yeah, when will that start?
It is supposed to become mandatory, I believe, sometime next week.
Thank you.
Where'd he come from?
Honduras.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that report. I forgot to say at the beginning of this, before I started, that I've been approached by a few people when they're listening to the county board supervisors, they cannot hear what's being said. So if we can make sure our mics are on and talk into them so they can hear, just to make them happy. And one other thing I want to recognize too before we adjourn here is that when you turn that mic on, wait to be recognized by the chair before you speak. You just can't turn it on and speak out. You got to be recognized first. So if there's no more business to do tonight, nothing else, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.